recorded. So thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. Good afternoon, maybe good evening for some people coming from different parts of the world, or good morning from the Americas. So please keep letting us know where you're dialing in from, who you are, and what you hope to get out of the webinar today. Just so that you know, Women in Africa is the world's leading international platform for the economic development and the support of African women entrepreneurs through various programs. My name is Oluwatoyin Adegbite-Moore, and I'm with the SHEAFAM&TAM Limited, which is a management consulting firm, and also with Reach, which is an EdTech company focused on financial wellness and consumer insights. So really happy to have you join us today. I'm hoping that we'll have a very engaging time with all of our panelists. I'll introduce them in a minute. Just want to make sure that, again, we all are, maybe it's not me that's not seeing everyone's information here, but if you can just keep letting us know where you're dialing in from, what your expectation is for this webinar, and really looking at the focus of today around Africa Heritage Day. So happy Africa Heritage Day to everyone. And without further ado, I would like to just give a little bit again on the topic for today, which is phrased as a question. Can preserving a country's heritage assets be the basis for building a successful business? So we're going to hear from our very wonderful panelists. Again, we're focusing on whether or not heritage assets can be a basis for building a successful business. So with us today, that will give us their insights on what this means to them and their work. Zaahirah Muthy, who is the Managing Director, ZeeArts Gallery. Dr. Evangelos Kyriakidis, who is the Director of Heritage Management Foundation. Mina Morou, who is the Head of African Programs at the Heritage Management Foundation. HARRIET Botanicals, who is the founder, HARRIET Botanicals, will be joining us and giving us their perspective. And I'm sorry if I butchered anybody's last name. Feel free to reintroduce yourself and let our audience know how to properly pronounce your name. Tell us a little bit about your organization and why this topic is so important. So everyone will have about 2 minutes to do that. Again, my name is Oluwatoyin Adegbite-Moore, and I'm happy to be your moderator for today's session on the WIA Women in Africa webinar. So we'll start with ladies first. So maybe we'll go with Zaahirah Muthy first.
Hi, you want me to introduce myself?
Absolutely. And you're
all right.
You have
Ladies
2 minutes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zaahirah Muthy, a proud African, an artist, activist, a founder of ZeeArts Gallery, strong advocate for women artists from across the world, as well as I'm an activist for the SDG 4 Arts and I am one of the ambassadors of WIA.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, Harriet.
Hi, my name is Harriet Mouk, and I am actually dialing in from Nairobi, Kenya. I am Kenyan, and I am the owner, CEO, and founder of HARRIET Botanicals Limited, and we retail traditional indigenous medicine to the urban and diaspora market. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Evangelos.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evangelos. I'm calling you from Greece. I'm the director of the Heritage Management Organization that's basically trying through training to empower the caretakers of heritage anywhere in the world to transform their assets from items of decaying items of study to sustainable resources of pride, education, and economic development.
Thank you. Mina, last but not least.
Thank you very much, Toyin. Hello, everyone. My name is Mina, and I'm also from Greece, and I'm responsible for the implementation of our programs in the African continent as an African programs manager in the Heritage Management Organization. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's dive right into it. I'll start off with Evangelos. Maybe you can tell us in general, can heritage help business, and how can business help heritage?
Thank you, Toyin. So what we say when we're thinking about managing heritage, we're actually managing the values of heritage. We're managing what the heritage stands for. So in many ways, this content that heritage has is unique content that is privileged knowledge for local communities anywhere. And so this privileged knowledge can become a unique selling point for business and can help the branding of business, can help the quality of business, and so on and so forth. While at the same time, business with its products, with its services, can actually really strengthen these values of heritage. And instead of actually being antagonistic to heritage values, to what heritage stands for, can actually really empower these values and take them further. Of course, a lot of the time, business does not do that, but it is entirely possible to do that. So we should never see business as antagonistic to heritage. In fact, quite the contrary. We can see business as a great ally for heritage assets, no matter what it is, be it recipes or monuments, doesn't matter.
Fantastic. Thank you for giving us that background. So I'll move right to Mina. And before I do that, so again, I want to welcome everyone. At this time, we have about 90 participants, and we have people coming from all around. We have people from Burkina Faso, from DRC, from NYC, and from France, and of course from Nigeria. If there are other places, of course, Kenya is represented as well. So as we move forward, I just want to welcome everyone again. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here for this very engaging conversation on heritage and how can heritage support businesses and even vice versa. So Mina, tell us a little bit about the work of Heritage Management Organization. What do they do in Africa?
Okay, this is an excellent question, but I'll start with the obvious, actually. But I always believe it is important to emphasize that the African continent possesses an abundance of cultural and historical heritage assets. So it is only natural that the Heritage Management Organization is drawn to the African continent. Now, what we do is we have various actions and projects that we've been working on the African continent, always with a vision to promote and strengthen cultural heritage management, and also to create and foster a collaboration between cultural heritage, creative industries, sports industries, academia, and of course, businesses as well. So we've been running multiple projects, as I've mentioned. We started a very warm relationship back in 2020, approximately, with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the African Union by offering scholarships to participants from all over the continent. And we've also piloted a project, a big project in strengthening capacities in 3 countries, which was Benin, the Gambia, and Ethiopia. Among this, in the Gambia, we also implement an EU-funded intervention, which is also targeting capacity development, as well as consultation and projects and whatever else heritage management related activities, with a vision again to strengthen the civil society organizations as well as the public administration to engage in policy dialogue, but in actions that has to do with heritage management. And last but not least, we have been recently awarded a grant from the Mellon Foundation, from the Mellon Humanities in Place program, which is also targeting the continent as well as specific countries concerning capacity development. That's Rwanda, Ghana, and Ethiopia as the targeted countries, but it has a granting scheme that it's open to the whole continent. And again, it's about raising awareness, capacity development, creating and supporting projects that they're running through the channels of the locals towards heritage management and creating sustainable economic benefits from it. Thank you,
Mina. So as all of you are hearing, there's a lot that's going on around heritage and the preservation of it and the sustainability of it. So I think it's time to move down to someone who is actually living this on a daily basis through her project, and that's Harriet. So Harriet, can you tell us a little bit about your organization and how you are infusing, if I can use that word, culture, heritage into your business?
Great. So my name is Harriet Mook, and I am from Kenya. So mine is a very interesting story because I wasn't really aiming to start a business. So what we do is retail traditional indigenous medicine to the urban and the diaspora market. And what happened is, because I am what they call an endometriosis warrior, I suffered for over 20 years with debilitating period pain, terrible menses, and very bad PMS, and a host of other hormonal imbalance related conditions. So what happened is, in 2017, I was given a formulation by an auntie, and for the first time in 20 years, I got a painless period. I shared this same concoction or decoction, as we call it, with a friend who was due for a hysterectomy. And then she didn't go for the hysterectomy. And then she shared it in a WhatsApp group. And literally overnight, people started asking me for this decoction. So it was still my side hustle, but through WhatsApp groups and a whole bunch of things, a lot of people got to know that there's this thing that can help you with your painful menses, your sister or your mom or your wife or your daughter. So we just kept going and going with this one formulation, which I called arrowroot. Now, arrowroot is a Cypsigis tree. So the reason that I maintained the names of the trees is just so that people in the village would then begin to understand the value of the traditional indigenous trees and not cut them for firewood or to sell them sort of without a proper plan, and to start regrowing them on their farms. Because if you go to my village, everybody has either an arrowroot tree or a tenroot tree or a different indigenous plant on the farm that they're using for their own personal use. So what I then did is I commercialized the whole venture. So then we get feedstock from the Southern Rift Valley. We work with 3 communities, the Cypsigis, the Ogiek, and these two are cousin communities, though the Ogiek are known historically to be the preservers of the ancient wisdom of medicine within the wider Kalenjin. And we work with the Maasai as well. And the Maasai speak a different language, but use exactly the same herbs, particularly those who are close to us within the wider Mau ecosystem. So my idea really was to bring cultural practitioners together and formalize their trade. A lot of them are sort of like marginalized women and the elderly. So they don't speak Kiswahili, they don't speak English. So we become the translators. I created my own formulation, and this was our flagship product, which helped us to grow and grow and grow. We then created a men's formulation to help with prostrate issues. So the tree that is used for the men, tendrate, is actually Prunus africana, which is used in Europe for prostrate issues for men over 50. So these are really well-known trees. So what we just now started doing is involving the government. We went to the University of Nairobi Pharmacology and Pharmacognosy Department, who then gave us a report to say our trees were fine. We then were taken to Ministry of Culture, and I became a certified herbalist. And we have grown in leaps and bounds because now we have a factory. We're manufacturing up to 500 bottles on any given day. We have 14 outlets, and we have something like 5,000 units selling every single month. And now we have 9 products. So it's kind of like, this wasn't really a plan, and I don't think there's any business plan in the world that talks about traditional medicine becoming a retail product. So just the same way you have Chinatown out there now selling Chinese medicine, you have the Ayurvedic medicine. I talk about the fact that, you know, all the other cultures have their medicine out there on a global platform. So we are kind of like the beginning of like African medicine also featuring on a global platform. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And most of you have heard of the bitter leaf that's now become even a capsule now that people are using. So our traditional and cultural medicines are now going mainstream, and we need to harness that. And how do we do better? Maybe, you know, through this opportunity that we're hearing from the Heritage Foundation and some of the speakers today. How do we harness that? How do we make that even more sustainable and make it even more acceptable, not just on the African continent, but throughout the world, as we are, again, you know, harnessing our heritage and cultural assets. So with that, thank you so much, Harriet. We're going to go now to Zaahirah, who will tell us a little bit about, again, what your work has been around and connected more with the SDGs. How's that? How is the role of heritage playing out in your work, and also with, you know, showcasing African artists that you see, and how does all of that tie into the SDG goals?
Thank you, Torian. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, our rich and diverse cultural heritage has a profound power to help building the Africa that we want to see in the future. As you all know, Africa is underrepresented on the World Heritage List. And today, when I was doing my research, I noticed that there is 39% of these properties on the World Heritage List are in dangers faced by various threats. And I think that there's a pressing need to preserve and protect those heritage sites. Coming from a small island, Mauritius, we have 2 prestigious heritage locations in Mauritius, the Apavasigat and Le Monde Culturel Landscape. Coming from an art background as a curator, art is in my DNA. Art is a universal language that connects people from across the world. For me, art is a catalyst to bring social change and make a positive impact. With the SDGs, for example, art has been also resilient for years and years. And the earliest prehistoric art, I believe, was in Africa, known as the rock art. That time, people were engraving on rock, on the interiors walls, seating of the caves. African art history has played a pivotal role in shaping the culture and history of the world. as I worked with artists and a genuine focus on African art for our initiative, Art Connects Women, as well as we have another initiative, Africa Speaks 54, I'm of firm opinion that African art is so powerful. Artists have myriad ways of expressing their emotions, traditions, values, cultures, heritage, through painting, installation, sculptures, song, music, and so on. I'm an avid passionate of African art myself. I feel the authenticity. I feel the powerful stories, the courage, the strength of the Mama Africa, the values of how simple things sometimes are transformed into magical assets. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that there is no doubt that art and culture are integral part of the cultural heritage management, and it is important to preserve and protect it for future generation. The best way to do this is for a structured and sustainable management system. And I think that this will help to ensure that the cultural heritage will provide accessible to everyone, regardless of their background and access to resources as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And inspiration is how I would call it. Like you said, the heritage of Mama Africa, very important. So let's talk some more about what are some of the challenges being faced in this arena of heritage management. Harriet, can you speak more about that? What are some of the challenges that you
absolutely
see?
So for me, because I'm dealing with traditional medicine, so the main challenges has been the stigma associated with traditional medicine. We have in 1959 something called the Witchcraft Act, which actually put all traditional medicine under the category of witchcraft. It's associated with superstition, dirt, sort of like it's supposed to not be a very clean process. So people always have a negative stereotype associated with traditional medicine. They want to use it, they hear it's working, but at the same time, they feel as if they have to hide it from their friends. So, or even their family, especially in the realm of fertility. I mean, women want to have babies and you find that you can't have a child and you're under a lot of pressure from your relatives. And finally, last solution is, okay, go to the village and speak to this particular mama, and she's going to give you this concoction, and you have to sit in her hut for 4 days while she fixes you. And it's just such a negative connotation. So for us, we've spent a lot of time doing what we call demystifying traditional medicine, spending time on social media platforms, on the radios, translating from local languages to Kiswahili to English, putting it into print media, branding, creating this manufacturing outlet, streamlining, reaching out to government. So we are one business that is constantly reaching out to government, whether it's KEMRI, or Pharmacy and Poisons Board, or the Standards Board, or the universities, or the hospitals. So we actually work with gynecologists as well, and other health practitioners. We work with allopathic health practitioners to sort of like say, this is plant medicine. Traditional medicine, African medicine is mainly plant medicine. 80% of all medicine is made of plant medicine. So just being able to let people know, get comfortable with what you have around you. The same way you will chew on a ginger root or make yourself, like a lemon ginger concoction when you have a cold before you rush off to the pharmacy. It's the same way you have all these amazing things around you. Bitter leaf is incredible that you spoke about that, actually, because I love bitter leaf. And it's amazing that our mamas used to put bitter leaf in the soup. So like our grandmothers and all the older people used to put the medicine, the plants, in our food. And it was bitter, but it was very good for you. It cleaned your tummy. It's antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and does all those good things that you just take for granted. So for me, really, the stigma has been the biggest issue that I have faced.
Fantastic. Maybe this is a good time for that explanation and for letting us know the challenges that are inherent in our heritage assets. So maybe this is a good time to transition back to Evangelos to really help us and I'm going to ask you, Evangelos, two questions in one. And I'm also mindful of time, and I want to give our participants to ask questions. So please, as you're listening to our panelists, please start typing up your questions and putting it either in the chat or in the Q&A box, so that we can get as many questions answered as possible. We really want this to be engaging and to have a conversation with you as well. This is really a very interesting topic, as you all know. So one, Evangelos, tell us, how can people build a livelihood this heritage preservation process? And then, how can the management organization, the heritage management organization, help heritage and business work together? So that's like a 2-in-1 question, please.
So I will actually try to answer your first question by highlighting a little bit of what Harriet is doing from a heritage perspective. Okay, yes. So Harriet has picked heritage from her village, which she has found useful for herself, and she has promoted it further. She has strengthened it. She has made it a unique asset that actually brings ultimately not only money for her community, not only money for herself, is not only making this heritage sustainable, but is also actually promoting it to the community itself first, to the country, and then outside. Okay, so this is brilliant work that Harriet is doing. While she's actually identifying a business opportunity, she's at the same time protecting, promoting, enhancing the heritage of her community. And while she's doing that, she's actually feeding some of that money back to the community to ensure that actually this business can grow, but together with the community, enhancing the natural resources that feed into her business and the heritage, and to feed the community that is the keepers of that heritage. So I think this is a brilliant example that a lot of different people from different local communities can follow, not only with medicines, but with songs, with recipes, with food, with crafts, with all sorts of things that people do not really appreciate because everybody in their community knows, but nobody else does outside these communities. So this knowledge is a tremendous, unique asset that nobody else has other than these local communities. So I think I have answered this, but actually this is a great bridge for me to say how can we participate in this by strengthening the people who are actually looking after heritage. And the people who are looking after heritage are of two types. And this is only for analytical purposes that I'm saying that, because everybody is the same. But there are state-appointed caretakers and there are individuals. But everybody, including the individuals, everybody has an equal share one way or another in protecting our heritage. And Africa is a blessed continent in that it actually has heritage that is alive in almost every community. Most of the communities in Europe may be proud of their heritage. A lot of that heritage is heritage that is dead, meaning there are no caretakers that really remember how that heritage was being used. I'm talking about the monuments and all that Europe is boasting about. So Africa is a blessed company, and what we do as the Heritage Management Organization is really provide the training for those that are looking after heritage, be it their own heritage or be it the heritage of communities that they're responsible for because they are working for an organization or for the state. We're training these people, we're providing the training that they need in order to be able to do their own jobs, because most of the degrees that contribute to these jobs do not really give us the training that we need. So we end up using management skills, we end up using communication skills, community engagement skills, promotion skills, educating skills, and so on and so forth, technological skills that we're not given through our degrees, but we need in order to do our job. So this is really what we do. And maybe Mina can complement later on about specifically things that we do that are relevant for business.
You just took my line. So thank you for that explanation, and also for using Harriet's work as an example of what Heritage Management Foundation is also all about. And so Mina, tell us a little bit more about how this is seen, maybe, and I want to ask also, I'm asking you also a double question. What are some of the things we need to be mindful of in terms of the commercialization of these heritage assets? How do we, in addition to you talking more about how the business kind of plays out in the heritage management process?
Okay, this is, well, looking from the perspective of the heritage, business is a natural outcome of it. And I would say that it's vice versa as well. So I'll start another way. I will say that exactly what Dr. Evangelos said before, and I will highlight it a bit more, because I think that's the base of how heritage actually gives to business and business gives to heritage. One of the major strengths, and Harriet very well outlined it before, is the participation of the community. And what we do as a heritage management organization, but what heritage is supposed to be doing into that in general, is to be able to bring all those people under the same umbrella and share knowledge and best practices. And it's something that we very enthusiastically and willingly do, because this is the birth of the entrepreneurial side as well, in a sense. We'll just bring it a little bit closer to women, to tell you the truth, and I'll just use, for the purpose of the conversation, a few analytics concerning what is going on in the African continent, just numbers, so to bring it into perspective. Well, in a recent research, it happened that it shows that 58% of Africa's self-employed population are women. And actually, in sub-Saharan Africa, it has the highest rate of women involved in entrepreneurial activity, which almost reaches the 26%, which those are huge numbers. So going back onto it and putting the numbers together with that, women all around the world, and in Africa for sure, they have been the natural caretakers of the local culture, and they play a very critical role, exactly like Harriet is doing in Zaahirah as well, because from that part is culture, it's heritage, and it's art too. And they have a deep-rooted passion for preserving and promoting their local culture. And this deep-rooted passion actually leads to women being natural entrepreneurs and have a strong drive in what they do. And you can see it from example from arts and crafts. Zaahirah, I think, can very much identify with that they bring heritage as entrepreneurial activity in crafts. They are engaged in cultural tourism. Those are all products, in a sense, that they use heritage. In agricultural business, in food, in traditions like music, dance. So it is a channel of feeding back and forth. And I think it's exactly what it's needed to sustain this communication between, let's say, heritage and entrepreneurship. In the Gambia, where we've been working intensely the past 3 years, except the investing in the projects and the ideas that the local communities have concerning how they can create sustainable economic benefits from heritage. One of the basic things that I think it goes for everybody, it's that by strengthening their capacity, by developing and evolving educational patterns and education in general for them in how to create sustainable economic benefits from cultural heritage, which is something that we have been doing intensely in the Gambia. We actually had tangible results from that as well, seeing women and men, but women as well, entrepreneurs, harnessing this and actually having results from the heritage, from cultural heritage in their businesses. I don't know if this has answered your questions, Toyin.
Yes, it has. It has. Thank you very much. I think all what you're saying in terms of the role of women is also a good segue into, I'm going to bring Zaahirah back on to talk a little bit about that, even some more specific to her work in ZeeArts Gallery and how, the role of women in that. But before that, the creatives industry, as you all know, is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, it's growing in leaps and bounds. And there's a lot that we need to harness in terms of our young people. So at some point, I would like maybe each of you to speak, around, how do we really kind of grow this ecosystem in terms of the creatives and vis-a-vis the heritage assets? How do we promote that? So for instance, one of the commitment that I've made personally is that I would always wear our native, I'm from Ogun State in Nigeria, and they have a clothing called Adire that is very indigenous to our people in Ogun State. So anything that I wear, I've now stopped buying things on the rack and, but having people sew it for me here on the continent. So that's one example of, again, really kind of, trying to ensure that the value chain continues to be sustainable and that we are preserving our culture, which has been used in so many ways globally. So without any further ado, Zaahirah, please talk about the role of women in this whole, maybe piggybacking on what Mina said in terms of the role of women with heritage in your work. Go ahead.
Thank you, Torin, and I would like to salute you for the initiative that you took to support creative women in the creative industry. And also, I would like to link and relate to what Mina said earlier. On another note, as you know, the number of women engaging in heritage management in Africa has been increasingly in those recent years, but there's still room for improvement. However, the roles of women in the art market remain heavily debated topic. Despite the fact that we firmly entrenched in this century, in 2017, there were a research made where 13 women artists listed among the top 100 best-selling artists in the world. And you will be surprised. What made me so sad is none of them from the 13 women artists come from the African continent, the Africa continent. This demonstrates the significant lack of representation of African female artists in the art market. And I think that it is essential and significant that we create a space, a platform for women artists to be more visible and acknowledged for their work that they are doing. Earlier, you were talking about the SDGs. Everybody speak about SDGs in their own way. And the goal number 5, addressing the gender parity, unfortunately, in the creative industry, women artists are undervalued compared to male artists. For our initiative, Art Connects Women, when we started back in 2017, we had 1 female artist coming from Africa. And this year, during our 6th edition, we had 34 female artists coming from Africa. And of course, with lots of challenges, we strive a lot to pull them to Dubai, but we are making a difference. And I think that we need to to focus more on achieving this gender parity in the art industry, especially in Africa, to ensure that women are given the equal opportunity and same recognition and opportunity as their male counterpart. And I think that also by creating more accessibility into training opportunities, capacity building, and business resources will equip women artists to develop their own strategy in business, because creatively they're on the top notch. They know what they want, they know what they express themselves. But when it comes to the business side, so this is the lack, and this is where we need to put our effort and support them. And I think that this will benefit them from an economic perspective that associated to this sector. Also that I think that by providing access to funding and sponsorship, which is greatly a challenge, and this need to be reviewed and see as part of corporates, ESGs and CSR or whatever, how they can support organization in the creative industry. And one last point is, for example, Art Connects Women, just to brief you a bit about the initiative that we launched, is we strive to bring women artists from across the world together. And we went to ordinary village, trying to find extraordinary women who are doing extraordinary things in their small village, and nobody speak about them. And for them to showcase what they are doing is a dream that we're making a reality. So when we started Art Connects Women, we started it with 20 women artists from across the world. And this year we had 112 women artists coming from 112 different countries. So basically we select one artist per country. And I was really amazed to notice that this year we received 800 applications from across the world. So to tell you that women artists now, they are trying to come forwards and raise their voice, but we need supports. We need people to think, to create those platforms and to make things happen more effectively for them.
Thank you very much. We have, I can't believe, this is what happens when you're having a good conversation. Time, is literally flying, and I'm enjoying some of the comments that I'm seeing on the chat, and we have time for questions. So if you all don't mind, we might even ask you to stay just maybe 3-5 minutes after the top of the hour, because I want to make sure that our panelists get a chance to say one thing that they want people to walk away from, and also maybe talk about the role of government, the role of individuals. Again, what's the call to action that you want all the 121 people that are on our still with us this time on this webinar? What do you want them to do differently in order to preserve our cultural and heritage assets? So maybe I'll start with you again, Zaahirah, and then we'll go to Harriet, and then Dr. Evangelos, and then Mina. You have 2 minutes each, so we can get to the questions. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I think that government, private sectors, and institution needs to come together. And I would like, again, to talk about these ESGs, which is a great topic in these days. We are bridging the gap by providing this platform to support companies to achieve their ESG's goal. Art is so powerful. It is environmental friendly. It can foster understanding, tap into our collective imagination, and draw from strength of many cultures, values, and heritage. And art brings communities together, brings tribes together, and help create a more equitable and inclusive society. And I would like to say that it is just an incredible, authentic, intellectual honesty asset that people need to seriously think about. Art is an asset. Art is a valuable investment, and stop taking art is just, someone who don't have any job. He's just, creating some painting in her house or in her village or whatever. People need to value art. And I think that government needs to take this into consideration. And I would like to conclude on this is Africa, gift to the world is a realm of human relationship, art, and cultural heritage. It is a source of pride and identity, a source of understanding and an inspiration for creative and innovation. And finally, it is a reminder that the importance of preserving our culture, our art, and tradition of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zaahirah. Over to you, Harriet.
Okay, well, I think what I'd like to say, what I think everybody should continue doing is, make Africa great again. And, we do talk about, I don't mean necessarily, go out and buy expensive artifacts or things like that. I just mean in your own home, on a daily life, continue to celebrate being African. And the easiest way probably is in the food, have African food, but use the tools at your resources. For instance, invite your friends over for a meal and maybe create a dish from different create dishes from different communities, have everybody say something about the dishes and what they think and where they come from and what they call them in their languages, and then maybe go live on Facebook, do a live on IG. So use the modern tools to sort of like amplify our Africanness. So, plant an indigenous tree, label it, take a photo of it, put it on social media and have people generate a discussion around it. I mean, I keep talking about the fact that the Nigerians, for instance, have taken Nigerian music and made it global, because now you hear Nigerian music in New York, in Japan, in Australia, in Brazil. We never thought this would happen. And the way they did this was by loving their own music themselves. And then the rest of us jumped, on the bandwagon. When I talk about government, I believe government can do so many things. It can create an enabling environment, first of all, by creating legal structures, and regulatory structures that enable people to do things, because these are the only assets that are in-house. We're not going out there to either borrow money or technology or labor. The labor is in-house, the technology is in-house, the resources in-house. So these are the only assets that we don't need other people's help to amplify. So to speak, we can actually do something about it. So I think government can just, hurry along and create the legislation.
Thank you. Dr. Evangelos?
Okay, so there's a lot to say, but I'll try to keep this as close to the 1 minute as possible. Okay, so first of all,
I even like 1 minute.
we just need to be proud of who we are, and everybody needs to celebrate their community and where they come from. And by doing this, good examples offered by Harriet, we need to make sure that everything that we do in business keeps as much of the value within the continent. It's actually really important that we do not send raw materials out of the continent to be processed. We actually do everything as much as possible in the continent. And actually heritage is uniquely placed for that, because a lot of what creates value from heritage, from the arts, is actually staying within the continent. Okay, so when you end up doing business, you really need to stay faithful as much as possible to your community, to the community values, but also be able to look at it from an outsider's perspective, because this is actually quite hard to do. But this is actually what we need to do. So instead of importing one from the other or from abroad, from out of the continent, importing goods that are imitating what we are using within the continent, we should actually be producing it. And we should be making sure that we keep faithful to it. Someone was saying, how will they not take my business away? And the answer to this is, you're not only selling items, you're also selling the stories to these items. You're not only selling services, you're also selling the stories, where these services came from and what they stand for. And nobody can take these stories away from you, because this is actually what brings uniqueness. And ultimately, for governments, we unfortunately need capacity so that they can actually work with business, so that they can actually fulfill their role And so unfortunately, because governments are not going to be getting more money, this is not the trend in the heritage sector. We're going to be getting less money for the heritage sector than more money. We should at least become more efficient and more professional in what we're doing, so we can actually be more effective in the way we work in this. And obviously that applies to the civil society as well. So I've said already a lot, and I can shut up now.
Thank you, Evangelos. Mina, last but not least, and then we'll open it up for some questions before we close.
Thank you, Georgine. I will try to be very brief and actually answer part of your previous question that I haven't answered, by just saying one main thing. I think that it's all the panelists, and I'm pretty sure all the people as well that they observe us actually think the same. So I think it goes with that question that heritage can give to business, and business can give back to heritage. So this is a two-way relationship that will always have to be working like that. So heritage gives to business a main thing. It gives the identity. Heritage is identity. So actually what it can do, it helps business, if we're talking from that perspective, to build a brand identity and to attract those drawn by the identity. On the other hand, how does business give back to heritage? I think there it's the very big topic about the commercialization of heritage assets, where it starts, how it stops, and so on, which we can probably discuss at another panel. But what is important to keep in mind, I think, it's the involvement of the local communities, because if they participate in the decision-making process, in the formation of the policies, then in that way, you actually secure, in a sense, and from the examples that we already had, I think it was obvious that the business itself, the entrepreneurial activity, gives back to heritage. So I think it's an everlasting relationship between heritage and entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, you would agree with me that we had some excellent panelists join us today. So now it's time to turn it over to our participants and, for some of the questions. And I'm going to try as much as possible to do the first come, first serve kind of questions. So the first question that I see is a question that's directed to Harriet. And it is, if there's a negative narrative surrounding traditional drinks, do you think it will be more accepted if the naming was rebranded, or is that shying away from culture if we rebrand it in a name that's more mainstream? If I could speak for the person that's questioning, I think the name is Santa Mbacham.
Yes, I mean, I struggled with this myself, because when I first started, people told me don't give them challenging names, especially with the political climate when we had an election back in 2017, and some said, well, this community won't like your product. Well, I said, if you want the original community of origin, number one, to derive any benefit, and for them to actually preserve the trees, because without the trees, we don't have the medicine. We have to keep the names. If we want everybody, we started as an example. I'm just an example of how something that so many people thought could never be successful became successful. How using your own traditional names and creating narratives around people in certain villages and being bold about it. There's nothing as authentic as being you. The other thing is, what then happens is when you change the names, let's say the name goes from Arorwet to Cape Ash to Acabegia capensis. So it goes from Kipsigis to English to Latin. And then it's maybe the research is done in Latin or in English or in German or in Japanese. So value has already moved. Intrinsic value moves away with naming. I mean, when you have things like egusi soup, even egusi, the way you say it, it has like a strong tone. I mean, if you now start calling it, melon seeds, so we're having melon seed soup, it's completely different from when you say we are having egusi that comes from a certain part of West Africa or Nigeria. So, I mean, naming is part of ownership, it's part of authenticity. It's also a way to emphasize and also take up space in the world. So I think it's just magnificent. We should use the names in our languages, all of them, all the time. Just the same way English is global. I mean, one day Yoruba will be global. I think it is global already. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Another question that's asked by an academic, which I think is very interesting, Olubunmi Agbola asked that, in what ways can theory and practice be introduced in heritage preservation? Maybe Evangelos, if you can answer that, please.
Well, I come from an academic background that is very theoretical, and we very quickly learned that a lot of the theories do not apply on the ground. So actually, it's good to know the theories, and it's good to kind of know the ideas, but ultimately you have to see what actually works. And every community is different. Everyone is different. Every social context, every country is different. And so we really have to be working with the local communities, as Mina said earlier, so we can identify from them what works, from them what they consider special, from them what they want. And so these already are constituent information that we can actually use to build a business, to see how we can work with heritage preservation, to see how we can help these communities manage their own heritage themselves, because they can do that much better than anyone else.
So thank you for that. As you can imagine, Harriet, there's a lot of questions about your business. So I'm glad we brought you onto this panel today. So one of the question is that, you know, again, regulation and maybe tradition is a problem that people have. So, you know, the fear that people have. So DJ Naba said that what frameworks have been put in place to regulate and to provide oversight of traditional medicine, and how do we formalize traditional medicine knowledge? So if you can answer that. Also, there's a follow-up question from an Esther Ibis, who said, you know, it's really, you know, interesting that you've been able to grow your business and expand a traditional business with so much stigma in the 21st century. So can you kindly share tips for beginners? So you know, if you can weave both questions in terms of how do you formalize traditional medicine knowledge, and what are some of the tips that you have for beginners in this field?
Okay, so formalization. So in terms of the legal processes, in Kenya, for instance, for you to advertise widely the way I do, especially on social media and on WhatsApp, you have to be certified by the Ministry of Culture, which means you have to expose your formulation, which a lot of practitioners don't want to do. You have to formalize it, take it to the universities, the one that you pick, and they have to give you a letter. So you have to make it official to begin with, and then come under the Ministry of Culture, and also start working with the Ministry of Health. So it's, for many people, they always feel somebody will steal my formula, somebody will laugh at me, somebody will step on me. But this is just like, you have to just keep going, and stop listening to all the voices in your head. Then what I have started doing is I've started writing articles in the newspaper. About three months ago, I actually met with a top legislator just by accident in a hotel. And I'm telling you, I completely bum rushed her. I said, I must speak to you because I want you to take this to Parliament and legislate on this. And if you hear it anywhere else, just know I am on the ground, really agitating for the government to take traditional medicine seriously, to open up testing centers, to open up research centers, to open up collaboration with existing pharmaceuticals and pharmacology departments, and to start talking about it as much as possible. So how you formalize? If you have a formula, write it down, then share it with somebody, test it with some friends, even as much as possible. As soon as you can, take it to the authorities, because it's not that easy to steal your formulation. There's a lot of fears around giving away this knowledge, this intrinsic knowledge that you have. But if only one person knows about it, it's of no use. It's only of use to you. But imagine if 1 million people knew about your formulation and it assisted 1 million people, then you're beginning to have impact. So you have to really move away from your own biases, your own internal biases against being African. And as I always say, take up space, take up as much space as possible. So for me, the main tip is I use social media actually, because I made a video because I was tired of everybody asking me, what's this that you've done? Tell us more about it, especially in WhatsApp groups. I thought I can make my work easier. I can create a video talking about what I have been through and what I've gone through. And then I can, in Kenya, we say sambaza. So I put that video on my social media platform. And I think in 2 days, I had 5,000 views. And let me tell you, within the coming months, I had 2 million views. Facebook took that video down because it had overreached. And everybody wanted to know more and more and more. And I got more confidence. And so it was just like, wow, you see, tapping into what I call ancestral memory. Whenever you use the things that your grandparents and great-grandparents were using, in a very strange way, you actually inherit their power, or you inherit that memory, that like knowledge that they had. They were walking in the forest, like, 2,000 years ago, and when they meet a snake, they know what to do. When they meet a lion, oh, they're so brave. They were fast runners. I mean, I come from the culture of the fastest long distance runners in the world. So you see, tapping into this ancestral memory is what will amplify everything for you. So be brave and just step out there.
Fantastic. So there's a question. I'm going to jump. If you all don't mind, we still have 118 people on the webinar. And if it's okay with everybody, because there's so many good questions and we're having such a robust conversation about this heritage, that I would ask that you indulge us and give us another 5-7 minutes so we can really ask, and then I'll ask our panelists to also be as crisp as possible with your response. We can get to as many questions as possible. So the next question has to do maybe again to the Heritage Management Foundation. And that is something that I'm actually interested in terms of even financial wellness. How do we incorporate this whole heritage asset into education so that our young people are learning more about it? And the preservation is not just at our age now, but the young ones behind us and our bulging youth population in Africa can really learn more and use more as part of economic development and sustainability. Over to you.
You meaning Mina or Evangelos? Okay.
All
right. So I have a short answer. There are different ways of incorporating something into the education sector. Obviously, there is a state-sanctioned education sector, but there is also what education you get from your parents, what education you get from your relatives, what education do you get from your village. For the state-sanctioned education, obviously, work needs to be done. And I think there are good examples within the continent that one should be looking at. Namibia, for example, is a country that has actually done significant efforts to include the heritage sector into the formal education. And also I don't remember the name of the festival. There is a festival for the heritage of Namibia that are celebrating different tribes every year and their heritage throughout the country. Again, this is quite formal. It's national, but ultimately the training and the education that comes for our kids about our heritage and our local community's heritage is in the hands of the community, and it's ultimately in the hands of the family and of the relatives. So we really need to be rigorous in that, and we really need to be proud about that. And this is one of the vicious cycles that we have. Heritage actually brings pride, and pride brings a greater promotion of heritage. But lack of pride brings a lack of talking about heritage. And so therefore, we really need to be proud about who we are. We really need to be proud about our heritage, and we need to make sure that we pass it on to our children.
And I think the challenge that Modina Jani is bringing to the table with this question is twofold. One, what can Heritage Foundation do to encourage the government and other nonprofits to incorporate this into the schools, into the education system in more of a formal process? And then the other is, how do you create avenues for young people to really kind of promote their passion around organically produced products that are coming up out there? Because one of our participants' daughter is a science student who wants to get involved. How can she get involved? Where does she begin? What would you suggest for our young people?
Are you talking to me again?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So we do training, and training comes in different guises. There is training for professionals, which is our main demographic. But then we are also coming up slowly with open access training. So we've only uploaded 2, but there will be more coming. And ultimately, some of that training that we do creates trainers, which hopefully will be functioning at the local level. Ultimately, our organization, that's what it does. It actually does training, and training can actually help individuals and their projects, but actually can also work the other way around. It can actually help projects and therefore the individuals that are working with them. So very often, most of the training that we do is based on impact. And so people are coming with their own projects and their proposals, and we are supporting these proposals. We've actually given, I do not know, more than 400 scholarships to African heritage managers the last 2 years. So we are doing as much as we can. Of course, what we can do is limited in comparison to the opportunity that is out there for heritage and business in the continent. And so we all need to be very vigilant in actually trying to promote our own heritage and to promote the incredible wealth that Africa has in its hands.
So with that, Evangelos, maybe you can put in the chat your website and also whether or not these trainings are free, because I'm sure people would like to know, and if it's also online so that people from around the country, around the world can participate. So that's important. And then another question maybe to Zaahirah around how do we encourage, how can we promote an awareness and consciousness of men by including women in decision-making within the communities? How would you suggest that this happens? Fidele asked this question.
Thank you. It's a wonderful question, actually. I always say that we need men, because if we keep talking about women and women empowerment, so we will never achieve our goal. And I think that capacity building and involve men in our initiative, in our activity in the exhibition is one of the main and significant step to move forward. Also by engaging with men and making them part of this leadership position, and where men can understand that it's important that women be part of them. We are partners in all the decision makers, and women are of value lesser. I share my personal experience with Art Connects Women again. When I meet people, corporate CEOs, to introduce the project, I meet mainly male who make the decision maker. But it's quite challenging. But the fact that you're a woman and you try to make the education of those men, I think that this is a challenge that we are facing, and I will tap on again by creating capacity building and educating men, and let them involve in the process and engaging in communication, in dialogue and exchange those research, I think this will make an impact.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. There was one other question that I'm going to see if Harriet can answer, and that has to do with the role of, again, the traditional medicine business that you're in, and the role of the pharmaceutical companies, and how do you consider the rituals related to on inhibiting its adaptation in global pharmaceutical world, you know, in terms of the business that you're in?
Okay, so I mean, for my own example, for instance, I've got my intellectual property. I engaged with Kenya Institute of Intellectual Property. I've done my copyrights and I've done my trademarks. And the reason I did this was because when my product did very well, my women's product, there were people in the market who then would either get hold of it, dilute it, or change the name slightly. So I wanted to protect myself, protect my formula in as much as possible. And this was what lots of practitioners are afraid of, that their formula will be stolen or will be diluted, or something will happen along the way and they lose value. So I've done enough research to understand that at some point I must engage with the pharmaceuticals. A few have approached me, but what is critical for me is that the knowledge and the glory or everything else, the self-esteem, remains with the community. So it's very unlikely that we'll be giving away this and it just becomes a pharmaceutical product. It must also retain its cultural element. So I'm more interested as an entrepreneur in engaging in, you know, other cultural organizations and partnering with those kind of investors, those kind of entrepreneurs who just want to keep my business the way it is, keep it cultural, continue to connect it to the people where it came from, have a focus on the forest, on preserving the forest, other than just sort of like giving it away to the pharmaceuticals, making some money and walking away. Maybe I just have a very strong, obviously I have a very strong interest in maintaining this knowledge within the community.
Okay. And maybe a follow-up to that is, you know, empowering indigenous herb planters, you know, because if, you know, again, against the challenge that they face with the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, pharmaceuticals are definitely pushing their way as the way to cure and to, you know, for healthy living, when there's indigenous herbs that, you know, and people planting that need to also be encouraged. So how do you balance the push maybe from the West for all the pharmaceutical companies coming even into Africa to get the raw materials that they also use in their products, versus really encouraging more people and more indigenous herb planters?
So this can only be done when people just use the traditional medicine. You know, I would say 80% of Africans actually use traditional medicine, but don't talk about it so much. And some of that is because they don't have enough access or affordability to the allopathic healthcare system. And for many of people in the village, even there's women who would rather have a traditional birth attendant than actually a gynecologist, who they feel is more invasive, or a midwife. So the only way, the pharmaceuticals are definitely here with us, and they are taking, you know, our beloved tenduate, which is Prunus africana, is actually on the endangered species list because it was over-harvested by European pharmaceuticals. We have another product that is called the cancer bush. We call it sorate, and it's Wabugia ugadensis. It's also on the endangered species list because it's just being harvested and harvested and harvested. Now, how do we stop another person taking something that is yours? Well, if you're using it, if your family is using it, and if you're protecting it yourself, the only people who have access to the forest, to the herbs, is actual Africans who live there or around it. So you can protect what's yours if you know the value, or if you decide to amplify the value, if you teach your children, if you use the name in your language so that your child is very particular. Oh, mama used to say this, this tree, don't cut it. No, don't use it just, you know, to make silly things. This tree is very important for us. Oh, mama used to use this as a tea. Or grandma gave this when I had a rash and I felt so much better. I slept so well. So telling stories to your children, always like reiterating the language. Every time we do this, every time even we speak in Kiswahili, for instance, and talk about wonderful Kiswahili dishes, those are amplified. So nobody can ever come and say, oh, they have taken mahamris. Mahamris now belong to the Germans, type of thing, if the owners of the mahamris are actually amplifying the mahamris.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So at this point, without any further ado, I want to thank each and every one of our panelists, Harriet, Zaahirah, Evangelos, and Mina. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights. We could go on for another hour. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of questions. Obviously, it looks like we're gonna have to have a part two. We still have 100 people online. At the top of when it was really, at the top of our presentation here, we had, I think, about 125 people. So to still have 100 people left, it tells me that this is a very important topic that people can, people want to continue to have a conversation about. So I just, again, because of time and I want to say that if we did not answer your questions, we will please reach out to us. I'll also put my information on online so that you can let us know if there's a particular question. We can be able to field that to the right people. The other way is that you look at the WIA's website would have some information about this event and what we discussed today. And with that, again, I want to thank every one of you. I'm going to, once I'm done with I have a quote that I want to use as inspiration for all of us as we move forward on this topic of heritage. And it's from Maya Angelou, and I'm going to add a little bit, to her quote to make it even more relevant for us. But the quote goes like this: when members of a society wish to secure that society's rich heritage, they cherish their arts, their culture, and respects their artists. The esteem with which we regard the multiple cultures offered in our country enhances our possibilities for healthy survival and continued social and economic and political development. So that's the piece, because she only ends it with, it enhances our possibility for healthy survival and continued social development. So I just want to, again, encourage all of us that this is an opportunity for us to really live out our traditions, to be proud of our traditions and culture. For this webinar. Anytime you see me doing something important, I'm always putting on our traditional attire, whether it's adire or ashoke or any of those, to again promote our culture, because I'm really truly proud of our culture, and we do need to look forward to harnessing and keeping our assets and turning it to businesses that will be sustainable over long term. So with that, I want to say thank you from Women in Africa, and also to wish everybody a wonderful day. Thank you for dialing in from all around Africa, including America and Europe. So thank you for being here today, and God bless.
Thank you.
I'm putting my information on here for some people to contact me if you have any questions. And
thank you, Toyin. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.